Now we turn to the fourth speaker for the proposition to continue the argument for the proposition in tonight's debate, James Hadnett. Thank you.
Good evening to the House, audience, and of course my lovely opposition. I'd like to start with a rebuttal of some points my opponents have made. Ms. Fox, I think it's an incredibly naive take to think that slavery and racism have been fought by debating people. I've had to debate whether or not I have worth as a human being, and I think it's disgusting to have to fight people who don't think you should exist. And throughout human history, it's been rare that direct debate has been the key to changing minds. Dr. King did not debate racists on the grounds of his worth, Harvey Milk did not debate homophobes on the grounds of his worth, and Emily Davidson did not debate misogynists on the grounds of her worth. And to Ms. Fox and Mr. Ziam, it's not condescending or diminishing to the population to prevent the speech of someone spreading misinformation. Lies aren't always easy to disprove, and we live in the misinformation era. It's not like even this debate is being fact-checked as it goes along. Confirmation bias has existed for a long time. We even have a phenomenon around it in a group setting called cargo cult thinking. Expecting everyone to have the time, intelligence, and even the resources to do significant research into all views they hear is an incredibly privileged position to take. Now onto my main section debate. As much as people might wish it otherwise, university is a private business, and a business has a right to choose who it conducts itself with, and this same philosophy extends into the technological realm of social media. Before we proceed, I want to make it crystal clear, by no means at all is the proposition stupid enough to think that deplatforming is the be-all and end-all of preventing hate speech, or as Mr. Ziam claimed, countering hate speech, or of even changing a great number of minds on the subjects that people commonly get deplatformed for. Deplatforming is explicitly about reducing harm by reducing reach. It is not a silver bullet for curing ideas like racism or homophobia or anti-Semitism. On social media, this has been seen time and time again. For individuals, we have Alex Jones from InfoWars, proponent of Pizzagate, and the idea that Sandy Hook shooting was a conspiracy, was removed from most social media in 2019. And in that same year, Milo Yiannopoulos, who aside from his comments about how child molestation is tantamount to character building, ran a targeted racist ad campaign on the streaming website Twitch to defame another streamer. Since they've been deplatformed, their influence has been reduced significantly. They've seen large drops in income, viewership dropping by over 50%, Yiannopoulos declaring bankruptcy relating to this, having to move to platforms with even less viewers like Gab, Vote, and Telegram instead of using more popular platforms like Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter has been detrimental to their operations. There are so many other examples that I could use, but I don't want my entire section of the debate to just be showing how effective social media deplatforming is. And this is all without bringing up the terms of agreement that you sign when you use Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook that explicitly outline what can get you kicked off their platforms, which these people then choose to violate, in spite of the fact that they're running businesses that actively use the platforms as sources of income. God, I wish I could sign an agreement not to do something at my job, break that agreement, and then generate a fraction of the sympathy that these people seem to get. Now, to bring back my previous statement that deplatforming is about reducing harm by reducing reach of harmful ideas, if you allow someone to speak and talk on their ideas in a private setting, say contracting a political speaker for a keynote university speech, then you implicitly give their ideas at least a small amount of credence. Let's step away for a moment here and pretend that a concept like deplatforming doesn't exist. Currently, I'm sitting here having a debate with an opposition who I imagine spent at least a small amount of time on research and structuring their debate. The fact that we are having this debate means that the Literific as a society believes that both sides have reasonable credence. They each have their own merits with which to stand on. For a more extreme example, if we were having a debate on, say, the impact of climate change and what could be done to prevent it, and one side is a group of climatologists and the opposition is a group of climate change deniers, you have explicitly given the deniers' ideas credence by simply allowing them to have a seat on the discussion. Even if you spend the entire debate tearing them apart piece by bloody piece, you have given them a microphone, you have walked them on stage and said, this ideology has something that's worth discussing. And that's before you even get into the practical side of it. Why did we give the platform to someone who's arguing in bad faith and being facetious, instead of, say, an alternate viewpoint on how to tackle climate change? And even with all the logic, statistics, and reasoning in the world, you can't out-debate someone who simply didn't use logic or reason to arrive at their conclusions. Ideologies like fascism, eugenics, or simply racially targeted policies aren't beaten by using facts. And most of these violent, senseless ideas have their own self-correcting mechanisms that explicitly prevent the use of reason against them, most of which you've already seen these past few years. There are liberal conspiracies attempting to silence me. This is fake news. The government is conspiring against us to suppress the truth. Ladies and gentlemen, all people are created equal, but all ideas aren't. In the picture I just painted for you, deplatforming a fascist or a racist or an anti-Semite or a eugenicist before they even get to tell their lies is necessary for the continued function of our modern society. And if debating these people, if giving them a platform and debating them actually worked, then why would these arguments still be perpetuating society nowadays? Why is fascism cropped up every 30 years since its inception, when it's demonstrably a terrible form of government? Why have provably false racial stereotypes pervaded our societies for centuries? Debating the people most often deplatformed doesn't work to change their minds or even their audience's minds. And if I have to hear one more person decry I have been censored after being deplatformed, I will tear what's left of my hair out and just eat it on public TV. You have not been censored. You haven't even been blacklisted. You have not been arrested by the government or prevented from talking in any public forum. You can still write for newspapers, you still get published, you still get invited to non-university platforms, and in many cases, you don't even get deplatformed on social media because you're not stupid enough to break the rules on those platforms. No platform as a policy is simply a university deciding that from an economic and publicity standpoint, in terms of being a private business, you are far more trouble than you're worth. And this goes double for any of the organizations on the no platform ban list. 5 of the 6 having had terrorist cells associated with them, and the 6th wanting to establish a global Muslim caliphate by supposedly totally non-violent means. I can't imagine why a university wouldn't want to risk having them as representative speakers from a strictly business perspective. And even if we were to be very generous and grant speakers the same rights that, say, contract workers have, almost every individual who's been deplatformed in the UK would have seen similar trouble under the various anti-discrimination acts relating to race, gender, sexuality, and religion, and I sincerely doubt our opposition to advocate for the rolling back of those protections in favour of freedom of consequence. Ladies and gentlemen, the proposition isn't advocating for silencing people on the left or on the right. People who have interesting policies on immigration or quite unfortunate stances on the trans community, or even hot takes on Islam and its influence in the world. We're banning people because they're incapable of having anything close to these stances, and because they're incapable of rationally discussing them in a debate or private forum without talking about restricting individuals' rights. We're talking about people who incite calls to violence against the Israeli populace. We're talking about people who say that trans-identifying individuals should be sectioned and sterilized, and that's from individuals who haven't been put on the no-fly list. In conclusion, as I said earlier, all ideas are not created equally. If there truly is such a thing as the free marketplace of ideas, then deplatforming is simply the will of the marketplace letting itself become known. A man doesn't build an inferior product and malign the consumer for people buying into his competitors' products. And in the same way, it's not the liberal media conspiring against you. It's not snowflakes seeking to silence you. Your idea is either too dangerous or simply just unpopular, and crying out that you're being oppressed by a private institution instead of working to fix the flaws in your ideology is just pathetic. I would hate to see a world that my opposition is campaigning for, one where the speaker is held to no consequence and bends private institutions to their will to advertise whatever extremist ideology pops between the 2 random brain cells clashing together in their heads. That sounds a lot more like oppression to me. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I urge for you to vote proposition.